Okay, let's try it again. There you go. Now it's working. And we are live. Thank you. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topic as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. Sorry for the technical difficulty. The mic was not plugged in properly. I had to reset it. But anyway, so this week's, a lot of interesting news that have happened the last week or so. First and foremost, you'll be surprised to find out that Hertz, the renting car company giant, has recently bought a boatload of Tesla vehicles. Why is that so? Is it going to benefit the company in the future? We'll talk about that. Also, Australia, the country, is betting that electric vehicles will be the way of the future. So, is that going to be practical, realistic? Will it ever happen? We'll also see. Uh, on a similar note, for electric vehicles, obviously one of the many difficulties for adoption of people buying electric vehicles is its battery consumption. You can just imagine being stuck on the road if you have limited range on your battery cars. But Panasonic, who's one of the car battery makers for Tesla, has recently launched a bigger, better battery called the 4680 or 4680 battery cell. So will it be a significant improvement? We'll talk about that. And also we'll be talking about Best Buy, the retail giant, is also taking advantage of the high demand for the PlayStation console. And it's not going to be cheap. So they're capitalizing on the demand. Next is we have superstar singer Mariah Carey. You would be surprised that a singer like her is foreign investing into cryptocurrency. Guess what currency would that be? And lastly, we'll be talking about how big businesses truly affect small businesses, and are they here to really help the small businesses or actually cut out the competition altogether here? So we'll talk about that. Anyway, so to start off, so I was surprised to find out when I read this article regarding Hertz is ordering 100,000 Teslas. That's worth reportedly worth around a little over 4.2 billion dollars. So that's according to the Verge.com here. And obviously for a car rental company, especially with what happened last year, obviously it hampered their business performance or even revenues as well as profit. So is it enough to convince people to rent their vehicles? Because obviously it's the going trend that people are trying to shift or trying to take a closer look in terms of using electric vehicles here. Does it make sense? Will it benefit Hertz here? Obviously this tremendously benefit Tesla, the company, which obviously trying to make a substantial sales as they move forward into the future while releasing more electric vehicles here. So let's take a closer look. So obviously, according to Hertz, it's an ambitious plan to electrify its fleet. Now, whether it makes sense for the company, still it's still debatable here. Now, the model for the Tesla that they've invested upon is the Model 3 sedans. So you can rent it any Hertz stores across the US and European market here, which is obviously if you're a business traveler or a traveler at that obviously people are going back to their normalcy in terms of traveling, whether it's for personal or for regarding their work. Obviously in the United States and in Europe, having a car is a big component here. Anyway, what's interesting here that the deal here is one of the biggest, largest order ever of electric vehicles, as mentioned. So this benefits Tesla tremendously. Now, obviously, could they keep up with the demand for production here? Obviously, this will be purchased over a across a certain period of time, and whether they'll be able to meet the demand and so forth. That's why Tesla has been trying to keep up with the production here, despite the shortage of products, supplies per se, as well as chips, which is still a problematic aspect here. But obviously, if your Hertz here, it's going to boost your business here, because they've experienced a downturn obviously from last year, that when people were stuck at home, businesses were not able to do their normal operations. And one of the industries that were significantly affected, you have renting companies, you have the travel industry, as well as the airline industry, just to name a few, that were significantly hampered, and brought the industry to a grinding halt. Now, starting this year, that's starting to pick up a little bit, but question is, will they will those business be still be here over a long period of being idle, so to speak? And obviously, this is a tremendous strategy for Hertz, that they're betting that with the influx of those vehicles will generate more publicity and demand for their services. Now, obviously, for the renting of vehicles, there are other alternatives, similar to how Airbnb works for hotels and other properties that you like to rent for accommodation, for business, or for personal purposes. Obviously, Hertz has a lot of competitions, especially on the online space of renting vehicles per se. Now, offering the Tesla vehicles could be a draw, but will it be a long-term solution for the company here? And what's interesting, for those who are not familiar, Hertz already went bankrupt, or almost went bankrupt last year, because of the pandemic, as mentioned. And what I didn't know, that Hertz was already more than 100 years old as a company. And thankfully, they were able to refinance their debts to a tune of 5.9 billion through their investor led by Knighthead Capital Management, Certares Management. Now, whether is it enough to stave off bankruptcy or closure of their business, we have to wait and see here, because obviously, one of the big renting giants, Hertz, is a known name worldwide. But obviously, do they have here in our country? I'm not sure. I think they do, but or maybe not. I could be mistaken. But anyway, according to the CEO for Hertz, Mark Fields, he mentions that electric vehicles are now mainstream, and we've only just begun to seeing rising global demand and interest. I won't say mainstream, because of the adoption rate is still not that high. But for those countries or regions in the United States, as well as in Europe, as mentioned earlier, I think it's going to be beneficial for many travelers there, or people who's needing to travel here. And what's interesting here, there was an ad that was launched by Mr. Tom Brady himself, and let's see, what was that. I think we have it here, so let's see. It was interesting actually when I first saw it. There you go. So let's see here.
So you want EVs, you have come to the right place. Is that Tom Brady? Yeah. Comes in to recharge, get software updates,
Let's go.
Let's go. That's their tagline. Anyway, so what's interesting here, that the company is doing everything in their power to leverage their notoriety by even getting an endorser with the likes of Tom Brady, who's still playing this year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they're leveraging in his popularity. Hopefully, people would associate, if him promoting the brand, people would rent their vehicles here, in particular the Tesla vehicles here. Now, will it work in the long run? Only time can tell here. Anyway, so segueing to the country of Australia here now. Obviously, electric vehicles has been on the rise in terms of popularity and demand, with Tesla and other car manufacturers making more and more electric vehicles here. And Australia, the country, has saw to it that it would be a big benefit for their country if they would shift to electric vehicles and completely phased out combustible engine here. Now, it's easier said than done. Now, obviously, ideally, you know, in terms of shifting from fossil fuel to fuel combustion and engine to electric vehicles would be ideal. Obviously, it would help tremendously in terms of our environmental situation. But it's a little bit trickier than said. So according to the article here, the driven.io, so shifting to the electric vehicles could save them as much as half a trillion dollars here. Now, what's their case here? So let's take a closer look. So it was mentioned that the EV vehicles in Australia could deliver huge savings for the country and for even for drivers here, saving them cost by year 2035. So in the next decade or so. The key here obviously is the high adoption rate, and I think there's still a lot of issues that needs to be settled before you could truly see there's a higher proportion of electric vehicles in the road versus combustible engine. And as I mentioned earlier or even before that the battery issues is one of its main hurdles of if it gets depleted, how do you charge it quickly? And typically when you need to charge it, it takes hours if you charge at home. But if you have Tesla superchargers, it would charge less than an hour, which is much faster. But still, compare that to if you go to a fuel station and you just fuel it for a few minutes, then you're on your way. Until such a time that they can get that same result, close or even better results, I think it will take still time. So until technology improves, or the battery capacity or the efficiency of usage of batteries would be improved significantly here. And obviously the transition to electric vehicles and as well as increased adoption of public transportation, which is, I think, relying on EVs is not the only key here for any country or big cities. Could be a big savings here, as mentioned, as much as half a trillion dollars. So that's not a small change, because if that could save a country or any organization that amount of expenses, then they could invest the money to other more worthwhile endeavors here. Anyway, now according to the Deloitte Access Economics Dr. Eamon McGinn, he stated that transport is a significant contributor to Australia's greenhouse gas emissions. So meaning using traditional combustible engine is the culprit here, and we are now at a real inflection point, not infection point, where we can realistically look at the benefits from a fast, complete transition to EVs in this country. Now, obviously, regardless if it's for public consumption or private consumption of electric vehicles, I think until they can solve the major issues, whether it's hardware or software issues for electric vehicles, the adoption rate would be still on an uphill battle. And obviously there are other parties, namely the car manufacturers, who relies on those combustible engines, and obviously those countries that has a vested interest on supplying you with fuel or gas per se would obviously be against in the total shift of electric vehicles versus still using regular fuel powered engine here. And having less greenhouse gas emission, less air and water pollution, and less vehicle noise are could be compelling here. But obviously, unless it affects you on a personal basis, uh, long term wise, will it be immediately implemented here? Obviously, it depends on each region here. Now, Australia is, if their government is trying to push it, which is good, but the question is, how about other countries and other nations here? And according to their report, it recommends that key policy mechanisms, obviously the support of the government is tremendous here. If it's not backed up by the government, so obviously people will not be easily persuaded or convinced that they should transition from one form of vehicle to another here. And obviously using it as a driving force to accelerate the adoption is critical here. And obviously government can also impose tariffs or less tariffs and subsidies for companies to pursue electric vehicles here. And as you can see, slowly, a lot of car manufacturers have slowly embedded in their fleets of vehicles that they're producing. It's not just focusing on combustible engine, but a small segment with the introduction of EV vehicles. Now, what proportion or how long will it take before they even, majority or all of their fleets will be all electric vehicles? Will it be anytime soon? In my own lifetime, or maybe in the next generation? Who knows? But the key here is it's starting to trickle in one by one, and obviously at the forefront here is Tesla, who's been trying to push for the adoption here. But for all the strengths and benefits that the Tesla has provided in terms of a product and its service, it's still a long ways to go. If you've been watching my previous video, I'm very against how Tesla has been marketing the full self-driving features here, which is it's a slippery slope, because considering it's not a full autonomous vehicle, maybe a full assist capability is one, but improving year after year. But the question, will it take years, decades, or even centuries before we can actually see what we see in films, where cars are actually driving themselves, rather than people have to concentrate or having to be aware on standby if anything were to go awry, that people has to take control of the vehicle. And according to the Australian Conservation Foundation, they say that the increased use of electric vehicles could serve as an effective way to achieve significant environmental benefit. But still, there are still issues regards, if you're using batteries here to power up your electric vehicles, how are those battery packs sourced? They still have to source it in our planet, right? And how are they sourced? They're still using traditional means of digging up materials, and some say are dangerous conditions. So it's not a perfect scenario, but obviously the idea here is, if we can truly source those materials, whether it's the battery, how you manufacture it, putting it all together, then you can truly say that it could be tremendous, not just for business, but for our planet. That as we can see, as the years, decades go by, climate change has a significant effect. We might not feel it today, but we're feeling it slowly but surely here, as changes in climate, severe thunderstorms, severe weather patterns has been cropping up more often than it used to be in years and decades past here. And their goal is to cut emission within this decade and reaching zero emission, I'm assuming, by 2050. So before the next century. That's a big ambition. Now, how well will they adopt this? And if they can do it, then at least other companies can look forward to seeing this template, that they're pushing hard for this change here in the future here. But we'll see. Anyway, speaking of technology of the EV vehicle, as I mentioned, so one of my main concerns is the battery itself. Obviously, you still have to rely on battery cells to power up your vehicles, and typically it's placed beneath the vehicle, so you need lots of battery cells to be charged up, and depending on the mileage that you can provide. So having more battery cells will provide more distance, but the problem is the weight issue here. And obviously, the more weight, more drag, and then it would eat up more of your battery supply. And how you charge it quickly and safely and efficiently is the dilemma here. Now, according to electric.com, Panasonic has unveiled its latest battery cell for Tesla, the 4680, which is, they're going to produce it by next year in time. So as you can clearly see here, it's a pretty hefty battery cell here, and obviously with a bigger battery cell, more capacity, more storage. Hopefully it could produce more mileage in terms of driving distance. And but the downside is, the concern is still the safety factor. And as we've seen in many articles, videos in previous past, that it's not yet fully, I wouldn't say fully formed, but it's not yet fully perfected, the product itself, because while charging it, it could go array and catch fire, which is not a great thing if you combine battery cell and fire, which could explode. But nonetheless, but if they can reach to the point that that it can be safe to harness the capability of a battery cell like Panasonic has developed, would be tremendous here. And what's interesting here, that the battery cell's potential is, even though it has bigger capacity, could be potentially cheaper here. So is it because of the materials that they're using here, or some sort of technology that they've incorporated here? That's why innovation is so important in many instances, until we reach several iterations of innovation to make it more powerful, bigger storage, longer lasting, and safe to use, obviously over a long period. And as you can imagine, battery is not conducive for severe changes of weather, whether it's cold temperature or warm temperature, and it would deteriorate quickly. So if we can find a way to maintain or even enhance the quality or reliability of those batteries, would do wonders for the adoption of people considering whether I should buy it. And that's one of my main concerns here. And especially in our country here, where it tends to flood more often than not, will it be weatherproof or waterproof or underwaterproof, so to speak? Because if that's not the case, then it would be impractical to have a Tesla vehicle on our roads here, on and seeing it that it cannot even handle those conditions anyway. And as mentioned here, so it could be cheaper, efficient, and longer lasting or longer range with a smaller battery pack. So meaning you need less to get the same result, or even more result, or better result, so to speak. So obviously Tesla has been partnering with several companies to be able to boost its production, which is obviously the demand has been ongoing, as we've been discussing in the previous articles earlier. So partnering with battery suppliers is key to their own production, so it can go on smoothly. And with the introduction of their latest, I think, is it the Tesla Plaid, and then the much anticipated Cybertruck, which has been delayed for next year already. So obviously there is a demand for their products, but the question here is, will they be able to meet the demands and provide the best product that Elon Musk is striving for, whether exaggerated or not. But a car itself is different from the feature that they're trying to market, is another aspect that I don't want to get into right now. Anyway, so the question here is, for Panasonic's battery unit, you have Kazuo Tadanobu. He mentions that the cell is has 5 times more capacity, which I think is remarkable here. So how are they able to do it? Kudos for their development and research team here, and obviously improving on it and scaling the business so that it becomes more cheaper would be tremendous here. Imagine if all car manufacturers were to adopt Panasonic's battery capability here, and obviously everybody benefits here. So question is, does Panasonic have a, what do you call this, a contract that they can only sell it to Tesla for that battery, or they can sell it to other car manufacturers here? And according to Tesla, they confirmed that it plans to deliver its first vehicle with the new battery, the 4680, as mentioned, sometime next year here. And it's not just Panasonic who are producing battery packs here. You also have LG, Samsung, and CATL. Now, if you heard in my previous live stream, not live stream, in the previous business update, battery is a very key component, and as you can see that even Apple is struggling to find a partner that can supply them the battery, even though they're still in the, I don't know if they're still in the designing stage, or they have a prototype already that you could say that they could manufacture in the next year or a few years in the future here. But either way, so the battery is a big component for any device, especially technological device, whether it's a smartphone, tablet, laptop, in this case battery. We are so dependent on it that for a smartphone, if you're on a smartphone, you need a charger everywhere you go, so you need it to get plugged in. But for a vehicle, that's very limiting. So even if what Tesla is doing is tremendous, having tens of thousands of chargers nationwide in the United States, but outside of those countries, like in China or in Europe, obviously limited access to the charging station could be that could be a limiting factor for why people are still apprehensive. Unless they can make it so like it's just like any gas station where in every corner, not just every corner, but practically every corner that you go into, you can see a gas station, so you can easily fill up and then move on to your business. If we can reach that point, I think it would be difficult or take longer before we can even see more people, buying or adopting electric vehicles, let alone Tesla vehicles here. Anyway, segueing to retail. So if you're interested, since what do you call this? The holidays is around the corner, since it's the Burr months. If you're planning to buy a PS5 console this year, well, compared to last year, it's much more difficult, right? But I'm not saying it's easier now, but scalpers are still taking advantage, right? Buying several units and then selling it at a higher price, which obviously seems unfair and kind of sneaky. So should you wait? Should you buy it? Obviously, it's your decision. But one of the big retailers here, Best Buy, is also doing the same things. Now, not necessarily as sneaky as those other scalpers, but according to reviewgeek.com, Best Buy wants to be a PS5 scalper, meaning in order to buy PS5 which they have in stock, you have to be a member of their you have to have a membership program here. So you have to pay I think an additional $200, so that's roughly around 10,000 pesos. So you can just imagine the sneaky way of companies trying to drum up sales and taking advantage of supply and demand. And Best Buy, obviously the paid membership is not, I wouldn't say cheating or gray area. Obviously, they're trying to provide value here. But for those who are actually interested in actually buying the console itself, and the console is pretty expensive, around $500. So roughly supposed to be 25,000, but I think in here in country it's close to 25 to 30,000 pesos. So being able to buy those consoles in time for the holidays, obviously, if you're trying to buy it for yourselves or as a gift to someone else, price could be a prohibiting factor here, because with scalpers trying to charge you, twice the amount or even more, then it won't make sense. I mean, I won't buy it actually. Even if it's at retail price, I won't buy it now because of the limited games that they have. So, but that's a different discussion. Anyway, so having difficulty sourcing or finding availability of products, so Best Buy wants you to buy at their store, which obviously makes sense. But is the additional $200 or 10,000 pesos cost worth your investment here? Now, unless you're regularly purchasing products in Best Buy, then it won't make sense. But if not, I think it's a very cheesy way of trying to generate more revenue for the company, knowing that there is a high demand and low supply. And based on the the reviews that was mentioned here, even if they were offering the membership package so that you have the chance to buy those products, no one is jumping up of their of their feet to pre-order or place their order here. Anyway, where was it? There you go. So what's interesting, the inventory for the console is extremely low, as I mentioned earlier. And scalpers are trying to take advantage of that. And obviously, Best Buy knows this, so they want to jump in the bandwagon. And in this case, using a paywall of sorts, like the membership as mentioned, to be able to purchase technically the latest console here. So what do you get for the $200 membership program, or 10,000 bucks? That's a pesos. So you get free Geek Squad tech support. Okay. Then you have total tech access, expert access, a VIP service across dedicated phone and chat. Okay. And then you have up to 24 months of product protection, warranty, and then free delivery and standard installation. So for all the products that you're buying, whether it's television, smartphones, or whatnot. And then exclusive Total Tech member prices, so discounts for that one. And then 20% of labor for repairs. Yeah, that's after the fact you bought that item, but that's not going to break down anytime soon, right? And then they're also offering extended 60-day return and exchange window on most products. And then lastly, they have free haul away on most product replacement. Now, is it enough to convince you to pay for the membership? Now, unless you're a regular customer in their stores, I don't see the point of doing this, right? And I could just simply wait for the supply and demand to normalize so that gets back to its normal pricing, similar to how the GPU prices is still fluctuating currently. So is it worth it? Of personally, my opinion, it's not even worth it. So if I can play, I would hold off on that one and wait for the anticipated Valve Stream Deck. I think that's a better option here. If Valve can produce or can can actually provide the product that they've been showcasing. Now, obviously based on the reviews from other tech reviewers, it looks promising. It can deliver what it's promising here. Now, is it better than the Switch console? Obviously, the plethora of library, it's significantly better than what Switch is offer. I think it's a big mistake for Switch, with their debacle here with the Switch online pricing, thinking that people would charge more for a retro game, while other platforms, Sony and even Microsoft, is paying a cheaper flat fee for the entire library or practically all of their catalog from the past to the present and even to the future. So I don't know what Nintendo is thinking, trying to milk every money that they can from their customer base, which is, I think, kind of sad. But anyway, so going back here. So what's interesting here, the strategy, did it pay off for Best Buy here? Well, instead of selling out in a matter of minutes, well, guess what? The device ended up being available for nearly 2 hours. So people are smart enough that they're trying to drum up those sales just to be able to gain that extra buck here. Whether it's well worth it, well, for me it's not. So, but if others are put in a pinch because if they have kids that's clamoring for what do you call this, for the latest console, and it's an expensive investment at that. But if you're looking for an away, I think if it's available, then go right ahead. But you're paying extra, so technically instead of paying $500, you're paying $700, and the $200 just to get a way to get into the store, be prioritized, so to speak. Anyway, shifting now to cryptocurrency. What's interesting here, a lot of people has been adopting, not just individuals. You have Elon Musk, who's been promoting and I'll be saying that cryptocurrency is a good investment, and other financial institution is slowly adopting it. We've discussed it. I think Verifone and BitPay is adopting cryptocurrency as payment, and now we have Grammy winner artist Mariah Carey. Of all people, I was surprised that she is now interested or has invested in cryptocurrency via Bitcoin. So what's interesting here, what convinced her to purchase or to invest in this platform, from singing to investing in crypto? That kind of not makes sense, but hey, if you're able to, if you're able to find ways to grow your value or network, I'm all for it. So that's according to techtimes.com. Her investing is kind of surprising if you were to think, if you were asking me. So investing in Bitcoin, obviously, I've somewhat of an apprehension in investing in cryptocurrency because of its fluctuations here, unless you know what you're doing here. And with the sudden volatility of increasing and decreasing of its value here, and do they actually know how volatile it is? Obviously, if you're investing while the value is still low, then it would make sense to invest then, rather than invest when the value is at that ultimate high, because if it crashes down, then obviously your value or your investment would be half, or would be less than when you invested it in the first place here. Now, obviously, it's not just cryptocurrency that's becoming more popular here. You also have NFTs is another craze that artists, celebrities are foraying into. So I think as more people are investing, seeing the potential of investing other platforms, not just the traditional investing in companies, in stocks, and so forth. So looking in this realm, which is more easier, but it's more difficult to understand and more riskier, if you ask me. So question here is, should people be following suit with those big names like, so you have Elon Musk investing in crypto. You also have Mariah Carey, as mentioned. Then you also have other known celebrities. You have Shawn Mendes, Grimes, Paris Hilton, just to name a few, who are focusing or jumping on the bandwagon on the cryptocurrency craze, as well as NFTs. Now, can everyone follow suit? Obviously, you have to be careful which one to invest on, because of the, the volatilities, and it's pretty risky. So think twice before investing and know what you're getting into, as with any other aspects in investments here. Anyway, finally, for our last topic, so we were been talking about businesses, investing, trying to grow their business, especially during the current climate that we're encountering here. Are big businesses here to help those small businesses, or are they here to cripple, or to stop them from growing and competing with their business here? Now, according to TechCrunch.com, a tech watchdog campaign challenges for big tech for hiding behind small businesses, meaning, typically big businesses are always saying that they're trying to help small business here, but ultimately, based on their action, you can see that they're in it for themselves. It's not really for the small players here. And if it benefits them to do away with those small businesses or small competitors, it benefits them even more. Just look at the big tech companies. You have Amazon. They're not really for small retailers here or small sellers. They're trying to drive out competition so that they'll be the only one in the game. You also have Facebook, right? Driving out other social media platforms so that they'll be the only one in the game. Look at Apple in terms of their Apple App Store platform, right? Driving out competition that, you'll be stuck in their ecosystem. You're not allowed to use other means to be able to access the apps. The companies are obviously trying to circumvent so that they can avoid the 30% fee that, Apple is levying here. But their argument is for the security of the user. But I beg to disagree, because Apple has not done a great job. Even Google has not done a great job of protecting users' interests here with regards to many malicious malware or malicious software that's been embedded in many applications in their corresponding platforms. And so how are they helping those small businesses? It only props up their business rather than small businesses here. Anyway, the article goes on to say that companies have been pushing the narrative that the trillion-ish dollar businesses will trickle down, hurting small businesses that rely on their products, which is kind of iffy if you think about it, because how will it hurt Amazon, the big business giant, if small businesses were to fold? And as we've been seeing in previous articles, that even Amazon themselves is trying to compete with other sellers in their own platform, knowing if they can cut out the competition, then they will be the last company or last business standing here. It mentions here that some business owners struggle with relying on so heavily on massive opaque cooperation, and often have little recourse if things go wrong. As I mentioned, a good example is what do you call this, with Amazon. Jeff Bezos is stating that their business platform is to help other businesses. If that were the case, why are there so many illegitimate businesses propping out in their platform, selling fake items, and there's little to, I won't say nothing, but very little they're doing, meaning in terms of allowing them to use the platform. There should be a severe restriction, or make it more difficult for them to join the platform with extensive background checks, so to speak. But anyone could just register, and then if they were to shut down that one seller, they could just create another one and another one and another one. While for the meantime, the legit business that are hurting because of piracy are left to fend for themselves. So I don't see Amazon doing anything about it. They may say they want to help, but are they actually helping them? Same goes for for Apple and even for Google, right? In the case of Google, right, they actually pay Samsung not to compete with them in the platform, the platform of providing apps, because it makes sense for Samsung to create their own app, and because it's in their ecosystem, there are millions and millions of units worldwide, and if they were to create a platform similar to how Apple and Google does, they create their own app store, people would use it because they trust Samsung. And guess what? Google is paying Samsung billions of dollars not just to compete with them. So if they're willing to pay a big company like that, what more for the small companies? How can they compete? How can they offer a better product? Where's the competition here? Because obviously, if there's no competition, companies tends to relax because they have a big stranglehold of their market position, whether it benefits them. The question, does it benefit the user themselves? Anyway, so according to the watchdog group Accountable Tech, they want to draw attention with regards to this issue as mentioned. And it underscores the litany of big tech companies that harms those small businesses. Actually, a good example that one would you could use here in our country is the malls that are propping out left and right. So you have SM and Ayala's and Robinson malls. Now, for all of its benefits, having many of those retail stores inside one facility, obviously they're charging a high renting fee. So if you're a retail store, you need to generate a lot of sales. Now, if you're a small business, a starting business, how can you compete with the likes of them? Typically, you would open up, brick and mortar stores along the road, on the street, so that, it's more affordable, and obviously the access will not be as tremendous as compared to going to a mall where everything is laid out for everyone. So how does it benefit here? And obviously, what does those big malls do? They try to leverage that and build more malls so that eventually making retail stores obsolete technically. So if you want to buy certain items like furnitures, clothing items, you have to actually go to a store. And if you want to buy something more affordable, maybe you have to go to Divisoria or even Market or where it's more difficult to look for bargain hunting products here. And obviously, that's not benefiting anyone here, because obviously at the end of the day, businesses will tend to charge more so that they could stay in business if they're renting a very high renting fee in their respective malls, especially now in the pandemic where there are even fewer people visiting the stores. So how are they supposed to sustain it? And some of them have already closed down. And I think I've seen some of the shops that have been there for several years having to shut down because of foot lack of foot traffic in the stores themselves. And obviously, according to the Accountable Tech co-founder Jesse Lerich, he mentions that it underscores the litany of big tech companies that harms these small business owners from misleading and unreliable data. Obviously, given the example again, like Amazon, the data that they collect from the consumers, do they even share it with those resellers? And they even get those information from those resellers that they want to compete with, so that they can easily provide a counter strategy to compete with them, whether it's identifying the product specification, who their target audience is, so they can market it more effectively compared to the different resellers there. So the reality of running a business on big tech platform isn't always rosy so it doesn't benefit the small businesses in the long run. That's why I think we discussed it before. Even big brand giant like Nike, who used to sell their products online in Amazon, well, it created a whole lot of confusion. So a lot of businesses, counterfeit resellers, are trying to sell their product and selling it as original. So it would drive up their sales, thinking that if Nike, the legit brand, is selling in your platform and other illegitimate brands or counterfeit are selling, people get easily confused. That's why it makes sense for Nike to just sell it in their own platform, in this case their website, so that people could know this is legit, this is not. And what's Amazon doing there? Nothing. They may say they're doing something about it, but at the end of the day, the fact that those parties are still in your platform says a lot about their inaction, or not say inaction, but not enough action, so to speak, because They've been benefiting from that platform for several years or decades now, and yet they cannot even remove those I won't say nefarious, but illegal parties, and that's why it creeps. You have unnecessary reactions from fake reviews, counterfeit products because of the proliferation. Because the platform allows it until they prohibit it or stop it completely. If they can use technology to gain information from the consumer, I think they could use that same technology to prohibit businesses or illegitimate businesses from using the platform. And I think it would boost the image, the yeah, boost the image and the knowledge that if it's a safe haven to buy products, knowing that it's of high quality, of high caliber, whether it's a high expensive product versus an affordable one, they would be able to distinguish. So no need for deceits, being fraudulent in terms of this has 5-star rating and yet it's paid review. So how can we know which review is legitimate or not? And not all reviews are created equal, and not all 5-star reviews are created equal as well. So it gets confusing, and I think that's what they're trying to drive at, to confuse consumers so that they will make a purchase, and eventually Amazon doesn't care, because at the end of the day they pay a fee to use their platform, and they're not held responsible to a higher standard, right? And obviously for those small businesses, they even have to pay for using the platform. There's a cost attached to it. Not only that, they have to sacrifice their privacy, as mentioned. So they have to share their information with the company, and the company obviously they would take advantage of that. Who doesn't? So obviously it tends to favor more for the platform rather than the businesses, the small business at that. That's why significantly concerned. And you also have small business who rely on their tools, which only benefit them at a certain point, but at the end it still benefits the platform itself. And according to Derek, he mentions that this is how monopolies and oligopolies work. So those companies that we mentioned, they are a monopoly and an oligopoly. So tech companies in particular, and their services are only essential because they've engaged in an endless array of anti-competitive behavior to ensure that they're the only game in town, which is kind of true. Because if you notice, their actions can only enhance their position rather than help the consumer, which is they're supposed to be catering, right? But until people stop patronizing, buying, using their platform, they will not stop or learn from it. Just like in the gaming industry, it's the same, right? If people or gamers are willing to pay for a terrible game, right? Whether it's Cyberpunk or any other game, or even FIFA, or even NFL Madden, you can just imagine paying for a terrible product, but people can continue buying. So this tells the company, so you're willing to buy an inferior product, so you're willing to shell it out, so you can give out all the excuses all day long, and yet people are still willing to buy. Well, hopefully not everyone is willing to buy an inferior product. I mean, first time you make a mistake, I think that's acceptable. But if history keeps repeating itself, I think that's a reflection on the buyer itself now. I mean obviously the company that's trying to milk every cent is culpable, but at the end of the day, you need two parties to be able to collaborate in that transaction. Anyway, obviously, is it just all about the consumer who has who's responsible here in knowing which products to choose, held companies more liable? Obviously, the government has to play its part, and in this case, Congress in the United States. That's why they're levying those big tech giants in a anti-competitive court case. Whether they can make headway out of it, who knows? But obviously, at the end of the day, companies has to be held, especially tech companies, to a higher standard, and obviously, it reflects badly on your country, or not just country, but on your society, on the growing inequality of wealth. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. I mean, you're allowed to benefit from the ecosystem or of our hierarchy, but obviously there has to be some semblance of I won't say fairness, but I don't know how to call it. But if it seems like it's tilted too much on one side, could create chaos in the long run, which we don't want, right? Anyway, so the issue will still be ongoing as to you can see why those tech companies have been spending millions and millions of dollars lobbying for their benefit rather than go against those big tech giants. And and who loses out at the end of the day? Obviously, small businesses and us users at the end of the day, right? Because if they're allowed to do it, then they'll continue doing it, right? Unless we stop it, meaning we want to boycott your product, or we want you to change it so that we're willing to pay, no matter how much you're trying to sell us. If it's of high value, then we're willing to buy. But if you're trying to skim us, meaning sell inferior products and at a high price, I think that's, I think no amount of sane person would would allow that or accept that in the first place. But we'll see. It's an ongoing debate here, so we'll have to wait and see if anything pans out. Hopefully for the better, not for the worse here. Anyway, I think I think that's about it. So hopefully you enjoyed today's discussion, and if you have any questions, if you want to check out the link, you want to check out the full article on the topics that we've discussed today, I've left the link in the description below. What else? So as always, I'll see you in the next one. By the way, happy Halloween to everyone. So Christmas is around the corner here. Anyway, I'll see you again next week. Same time, same time-ish, preferably, but same channel always. Take care.